The stage lights of Britain's Got Talent glowed brighter than the stars above London. The crowd was restless, cheering, whispering, waiting for the next act. The golden, BGT, sign shimmered at the back of the stage like a dream carved in gold. Then came a boy. 15-year-old Ethan Clark stepped onto the stage, his sneakers too big for his small frame, his hands trembling slightly as he held a worn-out microphone. His dark brown hair fell over his eyes, and he blinked quickly, maybe to keep the tears from falling, maybe from the light that seemed far too bright for someone who had lived mostly in shadows. The judges glanced at him. Simon leaned back in his chair, curious. Amanda smiled softly, sensing the nerves. Alicia folded her arms gently. Bruno tilted his head like he already wanted to protect the kid. Simon spoke first. "Hello, young man. What's your name?" "Ethan," he said, voice small but clear. "And how old are you, Ethan?" 15. Simon smiled. 15. "Brave to be up here. Who did you come with?" A pause. Ethan's throat moved as he swallowed hard. My mum wanted to come, but she couldn't." Simon frowned slightly, catching the tremor in his voice. "She couldn't." Ethan shook his head, forcing a faint smile. She passed away last year. She always told me to sing here one day." The hall fell utterly silent. Even the distant hum of cameras stopped for a heartbeat. Amanda's eyes softened instantly. "I'm so sorry, darling," she whispered. Ethan nodded once, gripping the mic tighter. "It's okay. I just want to sing for her tonight." Simon, unusually gentle, said quietly, "Take your time. When you're ready." The lights dimmed. A single spotlight fell on Ethan. The orchestra stayed silent. He had brought no backing track. Just his voice. He took a deep breath, the kind that quivered halfway through. And then, from somewhere deep inside that trembling chest, came a voice that seemed older than him, cracked, raw, full of ache and love all at once. He began to sing, "You Are My Reason," but slower, softer, like a lullaby for someone who would never hear it again. "Greater than there goes my heart beating. 'Cause you are the reason." Every word wove through the room like mist, soft and cold. You could feel the ache in his voice, how each lyric was wrapped in longing. The audience leaned forward, no one dared breathe too loud. Midway through the second verse, his voice cracked. He looked down, his lips trembling. A tear slipped down his cheek, glistening under the spotlight. Simon looked like he wanted to say something, maybe to stop him, maybe to comfort him. But before he could, Ethan lifted his head and continued singing, voice shaking but stronger. "Greater than I'd climb every mountain. And swim every ocean. Just to be with you. And fix what I've broken." The power of his voice grew, like grief turning into courage. The last note held in the air, long, pure, trembling, then faded into silence. For a full 5 seconds, no one clapped. No one moved. Just silence. Then Amanda pressed her hands to her face, crying. Bruno stood up first, clapping slowly. Alicia followed. Then the audience rose, wave after wave, until the entire theater was on its feet, a standing ovation that felt like a collective prayer. Simon looked at Ethan, not as a judge, but as a father, a man who knew loss himself. He leaned forward and said softly into his mic, "Ethan, your mum would be so proud. You just reminded every single person here what it means to love someone deeply." Ethan's eyes filled again. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice barely there. But the audience roared for him, not because he was perfect, but because he was real. And somewhere, maybe in the part of the universe where hearts never break, his mother was listening too. The golden light bathed the stage, and Amanda, through her tears, hit the golden buzzer. Gold rained from the ceiling like sunlight falling on his mother's memory. Ethan stood still, hands covering his face, as glitter covered him like heaven's gentle applause. The crowd cheered louder, but his eyes, they searched upward, as if he could see her there. Smiling. Proud. Home. Months later, the same stage. But now Ethan was different. Taller, calmer, though still with that same quiet sadness that never fully left his eyes. The nation had fallen in love with his story. The boy who sang for his mum. Tonight was the finals. The theater buzzed with electric energy, but Ethan's heart was steady. In his hand was a photo, his mother, holding him as a baby, her smile radiant. He tucked it into his pocket before stepping out into the light again. The host's voice echoed, "Give it up for Ethan Clark." Cheers erupted, but Ethan didn't seem to hear them. He was somewhere else, maybe in the old living room where he first sang for her. Maybe in the hospital where she last smiled and said, "Promise me you'll sing one day." The music began, soft piano chords. This time, he sang his own song. He had written it after the audition, late one night, when the loneliness felt too heavy to sleep. It was called, "The Song She Never Heard." He closed his eyes and began. "Greater than I still keep your sweater, folded by my bed. Still hear your laughter echo in my head. The house feels colder, now that you're gone. But your love's the reason I keep holding on." The crowd fell silent again. Even the cameras seemed to move slower, afraid to disturb the spell he was weaving. His voice carried not just pain, but healing, like he was mending himself through every note. You could feel him singing through the loss, not around it. Midway through, he looked up at the ceiling again, smiling through tears. The big screen behind him showed an image, a small clip of him as a child singing in his living room, with his mum laughing beside him. The crowd gasped softly. The moment was raw, beautiful, human. He kept singing, stronger now. "Greater than you taught me to dream when dreams felt far. You said love's the light that finds who we are. I sing your name so the world can see. You're still here, still singing through me." The last line echoed through the theater like a prayer. No music now, just his voice, trembling and honest. When the final note faded, the lights dimmed again. Silence. Even Simon blinked rapidly, jaw tight, trying not to cry. Then Amanda stood, pressing her hand to her heart. "That," she said, voice shaking, "wasn't just a song. That was love itself." The audience rose once more. Some clapped, some simply stood still, hands over their mouths, tears running freely. Ethan smiled softly, tears glistening on his cheeks. "That was for her," he whispered into the mic. "Always for her." Simon cleared his throat. "Ethan, you didn't just silence the room tonight. You healed it." The cameras zoomed in on Ethan, a 15-year-old boy who had turned pain into beauty, who had transformed grief into song. As confetti fell again, he looked up once more. This time, he didn't cry. He smiled, a quiet, peaceful smile, as though he finally felt her hand on his shoulder, whispering, "You did it, my boy." The music swelled, the audience erupted, and under the golden rain, the boy who once trembled on stage stood tall. Not because he'd won, but because he'd found his voice. That performance became one of the most watched auditions in Britain's Got Talent history. Millions of people wrote letters, saying his song helped them grieve, helped them heal. Ethan never stopped singing, not for fame, but for memory. And every time he stood under the lights, he still whispered before the first note, "This one's for you, Mum."